I'm Vern Dreyer. I was the band director 25 years ago, and the young man to my left was a student of mine. We both had hair in those days. I know that Mr. Gregerson last week had taken the high school band to your Lake Music Festival, and that's where we were at March 13th, 1990. We were in Lyons, Kansas. And the format for that particular day was the high school band was going to perform a couple of numbers, and then a professor, I think, that they had hired to come in and work with the kids for 30 minutes or so. We had performed the two numbers, and we were in the part of the program where the professor was up front of our kids, and I was sitting in the back of the band. And we'd sat there a few minutes, and the band director from Lyons snuck up on the back side of the band and said, I don't want to alarm you, but there's talk of a tornado getting into Hesston. And I went, tornado? It was the last thing on my mind that day. And I sat there a few more minutes, and I told him, I said, well, if you have any more information, come back and I'll see what we need to do. So I sat there a few more minutes, and I got a little bit more concerned thinking about it. So I got up and snuck out and went to the principal's office. And the principal was in there monitoring the radio. And our bus driver was Ray Ediger. Some of you may remember Ray. He was our bus driver that day, and he and I both ended up at the office at the same time. And I wasn't there more than probably a couple of minutes. And my wife had called from here in town and said that the tornado had gone through town. She didn't know if there was any injuries, fatalities, because it was that quickly after the tornado had passed that she called. And after that information, we decided to get the kids on the bus. Ray and I talked and with the principal that we were going to leave the festival early. So we got the bus out and got the kids in a cafeteria, is what Delvin remembers. And I told them that a tornado had come through town. In those days, of course, we didn't have cell phones, so we really didn't know whose house was hit, whose wasn't. So everybody was obviously concerned about what had happened. So we got everybody on the bus and we headed back to Hesston. Now, the Lyons is about 30 minutes west of McPherson on Highway 56. And I remember coming and the sky looked fairly normal like it had looked when we had gone over originally. But as we got closer to McPherson, I looked to the south and there was the ugliest black rolling clouds I've ever seen in my life. And I remember thinking I probably ought to have Ray pull the bus into the mall, which is on the west side, which is closed. I don't think there's many stores in there anymore, or at that time even. And I thought maybe we should wait it out. And the kids were obviously emotional at that point. And Delvin was really annoyingly my second-hand man back there. He was consoling a lot of people, mostly girls. And he was just a junior, so that was understandable. And so we were supposed, my wife had told me we needed to get on the interstate to get back into town because that was really the only access road back into town, she thought. So Ray and I had discussed this, and one other thing I need to say is on the bus we had radios, AM radio, FM radio probably. I'm guessing it was KFDI because they did a real good job reporting in those days. And they were giving us all this information, what to do in case of a tornado, and if you were driving and you need to go in the ditch, and other things you probably heard too. So this was going on in the bus, and we originally were going to get on Highway 61 and get over on the interstate. But as we got closer, the clouds really looked ugly, and there was a tremendous amount of traffic on 61. And I told Ray, I said, well, let's go on to Mound Ridge on Old 81, and we'll go through town and get on the interstate from there, and he agreed. So as we got in, rolling towards Elyria, it started raining. And shortly after that, it started hailing. And on the radio, I remember, I don't know if Delvin remembers this, it was saying if you're experiencing rain or hail, you probably aren't close to a funnel. Well, that was somewhat reassuring, except the stones were banging on the bus cars. As we got on the other side of Elyria, not very far, all of a sudden the precipitation stopped. And someone in the back of the bus hollered tornado. There was the second tornado that day that didn't get near the notoriety as the one that went through town. This was a very well-defined funnel, looked much different than the one we just saw on Dean's film. It was probably, a fourth of the size of what we just saw. It was very well defined. I'd never seen a funnel before. And after having heard on the radio you needed to get them in the ditch, take cover, we were kind of on a collision course with it. And Ray was driving as fast as the bus would go at that point. And I kept thinking I needed to get the kids underneath a bridge, which was, I'm not sure, Turkey Creek, I think, was south of Elyria. And when we got close to the bridge, there was no shoulder on Old 81, and I didn't think we should pull off the highway and have the potential of getting stuck. So I said, Ray, let's see if we can make it to the next intersection, which we did. And he pulled over, and the kids got off the bus. It doesn't take long to empty a bus. Mr. Graverson, don't worry about the instruments. They were fine. They were all in the hallway, or the aisleway, and it was over the top of them. So a couple of girls went out the windows. We did have a twisted ankle from that experience, but all the kids got in the ditch. And I don't know what Delvin remembers. I'll give you the mic here in a minute. But I do remember standing there watching this funnel. It was the most serene, peaceful atmosphere I can ever remember. The funnel was, I decided I went back the next day, kids lost glasses and some articles as they departed the bus. I went back the next morning, and I'm guessing we were about 3/4 of a mile to maybe a mile away from it, but it was extremely peaceful. Of course, the kids weren't being very peaceful. They were very emotionally scared and upset, and I was too dumb and ignorant to be that scared at that point. And I had told Ray to move the bus about 75 yards down the highway so that if there was a wind, it wouldn't roll over on the top of us. So he did that, and all of a sudden it looked like a big bend in the funnel. Oh, by the way, I need to quote Delvin. Before we got to the tornado, he was consoling the girls, as I had mentioned before. And they called me Vern in those days, when they were polite. And he was telling the girls, he says, don't worry, Vern will not drive us into anything dangerous. And that was prior to the funnel. And here we are in the ditch now. So that was a misquote by Delvin. But the tornado funnel bowed a little bit north, and I hollered at the kids. I said, let's get back on the bus. And the kids ran back to the bus much faster than this old man. And Ray was rolling already with the bus, and Delvin was on the back pulling kids into the back emergency exit. And if it hadn't been for a strong football player, I would still be at Elyria, probably in the ditch, because he pulled me on, and I couldn't keep up anymore. And he pulled me on the bus. We got the door shut, and we went through Moundridge. And before we got to Moundridge, about a mile or 3/4 of a mile south of the sheriff's deputy or somebody was monitoring the storm like Russ was they were doing it for Moundridge. When we went through Moundridge, the sirens were going off again. And I said, go home, Ray. They're just calling for the tornado we just saw. When we got back to near Hesston, it was about pitch black, if I recall. There was no lights on. It was eerie. We were stopped by the highway patrol on the exit ramp. And Delvin remembered this, I didn't. I had to get off the bus and show ID to get back into town with the bus, even though Hesston was on the side of the bus. So when we got back to the high school gym here, all the kids departed, and where they went from that point, I'm assuming home. And we were the story that was never told. The next morning I went back to get the glasses and stuff the kids still had dropped, and where we put the kids was incredibly stupid. Because southwest of us was a pig farm with all kinds of tin buildings, and after I saw the debris the next morning, I realized how much danger we really were in. So I thank God we made it home. My assistant, Delvin.